fact, last year, the Gallup poll actually kind of looked at a broader sense of well-being. And they actually broke it up into 5 categories. And I think it's important to think about this, right? Career well-being, social well-being, financial well-being, physical well-being, and community well-being. And this is actually published recently on, by John Bath. So as a physician, you know, when we prescribe something, right, I have to first determine 3 things, right? Is it safe? And is it effective, right? And what's the evidence behind it? So those are the 3 things anything I give you, if it's a pill, if it's food, if it's happiness prescription, I have to make sure, or meditation, is it safe, effective, and does it have some sort of evidence? So we all know, just like the food argument, that bad food leads to bad behavior. And this is a great study, Inter-Heart study, international study, 52 countries, case control study. And what they tried to find out was what was the association of psychosocial risk factor of acute heart attacks. Okay, so what is one of the factors to give a heart attack? Stress, depression. Give me some real hard ones, like hard science stuff. Dan. No, come on. Obesity, thank you. Clogged arteries, the blood pressure. There you go, right, exactly. And so what they found out that, actually I'm going to talk to you a little bit about attributable risk. So it basically means if you control every other factors you see here, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, right? The risk of psychosocial distress is 32%, right? So a third of people with MIs have had significant psychosocial distress, which is greater than the risk of an MI than hypertension, obesity, and diabetes. So that's why it's bad. So I also want to show you here, which is a great study about optimism. And what they found out that after 9 years of follow-up, those reporting high levels of optimism had a hazard ratio of 0.5 for all-cause mortality. Simple layman's terms, they had a 45% decreased risk of death if you were optimistic. And I just want to, again, one study is not science, right? You need at least 2. So this is a glass half full, a half empty study. I studied with Ichiro Kawachi back in Boston. And there's another study, 10 years of follow-up. Optimist men had, again, a relative risk of 0.44 for combined non-fatal MI and cardiac death compared to people with high levels of pessimism. So it shows you how bad it is, but I've also shared with you how good optimism is. So my favorite study out of this whole game is from the blue zones. And if you've been to my talks before, I've talked about blue zones. How many people have heard of blue zones? Blue zones? So blue zones are these kind of 5 hotspots throughout the world where people live to 100 at 10 times the rate as Americans.
And healthfully till 100.
Healthfully to 100, exactly. And I love this kind of diagram here because Ikigai, and that's what the people from one of the blue zones from Japan call it. And it's a sweet spot, what they call purpose. The literal translation of it is what gets you up in the morning, right? And the Japanese believe that you barely ever find your true Ikigai once in your life. Some people may say the children, right? And it's interesting because it's really the sweet spot between your passion, what you love, your mission, what the world needs, your vocation, you are what you paid for, and your profession, your vocation, and what you're great at, which is your passion. And if you find that little sweet spot, that is your Ikigai. So I want you to think about, in your daily life, right, are you living your Ikigai? So with that, I'm going to pass it to Julie.
Is this working?
To the right.
This one. Okay, so I thought that it was important to show this because most of us, when we think of psychology, what do we think about? You know, we think of the negative connotations of somebody that is struggling and is having mental illness or finding out about people's or your own mental disorders. It kind of has a negative connotation, unfortunately, even though obviously it's very beneficial. And in World War II, what does this have to do with positive psychology? Initially, psychology was meant to study both our mental illnesses and also what we do well. But when the soldiers came back from World War II, there was actually federal funding that was offered for mental health services like never before. And that was the first time professional training programs for psychologists and therapists really took off. Because there was a need. The war brought home many soldiers that were really struggling. And that's kind of how psychology took off. And it kind of went in that mental illness direction. And even there's plenty of great psychologists. I'm just going to mention Freud because we all kind of know his name. And I love this because it says psychoanalysis was successful when the patient's neurosis was replaced by just ordinary unhappiness. So, okay, you're unhappy, good. Then you're cured. Okay, and it kind of has stuck to that ever since. The history of positive psychology. So again, before World War II, psychology had three distinct missions: curing mental illness, which it still does, making lives of all people more productive and fulfilling, and identifying and nurturing high talent, which, as you can see, again, we go back to the slides before and how psychology kind of took off in that more negative direction. The primary focus shifted to treating abnormal behavior and mental illness. And then the humanistic approach from Carl Rogers and Eric Fromm, and especially Abraham Maslow, who actually coined the term positive psychology, helped renew interest in the two other areas about happiness and the positive aspects of human nature. There can be things wrong with us, but there's also a lot that we do well. And Seligman in 1998 was elected president of the American Psychological Association, and positive psychology became the theme of his term. And that's when really the field began to grow. And positive psychology, when people ask what it is, it's defined as the scientific study of the strengths that enable individuals and communities to thrive. It's founded on the belief that people want to lead meaningful and fulfilling lives, to cultivate what's best within themselves, and to enhance their experiences of love, work, and play. So it's not happy-ology. It's not like, oh, positive psychology, like you're going to be smiling all the time and with a smile on your face. And I love this. So Dr. Chris Peterson, the late great, defined positive psychology in 3 words, and that is other people matter. So we need people to be happy. It is our relationships with others that really make us thrive and make communities thrive, just like this place. This is a great example how we could not do it alone. The value of positive psychology is to complement and extend the problem-focused psychology that has been dominant for many decades. Another great quote from Chris Peterson. So the yeah.
So I think
excuse me.
About like integrative medicine, holistic medicine, right? It's not alternative to conventional medicine. And I think what people think about positive psychology, I think this word says it best, right?
Complement,
because I think we complement each other. So
yeah.
When I work with a chiropractor, or I work with a massage therapist, or a Pilates teacher, or a yoga teacher, or a positive psychology practitioner, we complement each other. Because ultimately what we want is the patient to be happy and healthy.
And whole.
And whole, And I think it's not or, it's not alternative, it's an and.
Yep, good point, Rob. So can we measure? And the good news is, yes, we can. So this is the happiness formula, and happiness, H, is 100%, our circle of life, and 50% of that circle is your biological set point. So a lot of people say, well, I'm not happy because I've never been happy. My parents aren't happy, nobody I know is happy. It's just who I am. So you can't make any more excuses, because life conditions is also 10% of that pie. But guess what? 40% of that pie is voluntary activities. So that gives us a lot of hope that we can make the changes we need to actually increase our own happiness. And authentic happiness out of UPenn, which is where Seligman's master's program really was born and is still where it's, besides, I think it's the only one in the United States. Is it the only one in the US still?
There's one in there.
Okay. Okay. So authentic happiness, I want you to keep this in mind. There's a questionnaire that you can take that can measure how authentically happy you are. And also, I always use this for every single one of my clients and even my friends. I tell this to everyone. Michelle, you remember when I was telling you about the VIA. So the VIA character strengths test. What's great about this is it lists 24 different strengths, and it lists your strengths in order. Because if I were to compare myself to Rob and say, oh, you know, I'm really not good at science and math, I'm going to feel like a ding-dong for the rest of my life, right? But, you know, I'm creative, and when we're writing, I'm definitely the better writer. I'm kidding. What I'm saying is then Rob's then it makes me feel good when, no, I'm kidding. When we did our VIA, it was so interesting. My top strength was creativity, and the first line was something along the lines of always looking like for out of the box or novel ideas of ways of doing things. And then Rob took his test, and it was judgment, and it was basically the opposite of that, where you make a list of pros and cons and never come to a conclusion before you've weighed all the, you know. So when we have conversations, it's amazing how I can get an idea and go, oh my God, and this is so great. And Rob's going, like, pulling me down from the clouds going, make a list, write pros and cons. And this test was really great because it proved that my mind works differently. Our brains work differently. So I really recommend that you take your VIA character strengths test. It takes about 10 minutes, viacharacter.org. I start with all my clients, and it's so interesting that after I get to know them, after our first session, and they give me a little bit of background about who they are, then they take the test, and it's like, it's so clear that those are their strengths. I just have to let you know that self-regulation, which is defined as control of one's emotions and appetites, as a nation, we score extremely low on. So I didn't feel so badly when my self-regulation was at the bottom of the list. So learn your strengths and make changes accordingly. So if you know you want to change something, know where your strengths are and can you set goals accordingly. But I do have to say that we are wired to be negative. You know, the evolution of the brain, for those of you that have been to Rob's talks in the past, the lizard brain, you know, missing the bad was life-threatening, but missing the good was not. It was like when my dad would say, you're grounded, I don't care if you miss the party. You know, old programming in a new world, and the hardware isn't changing, right? Our hardware isn't changing in our minds, so we have to update our software and just know these facts. When we know better, we can do better. The evolution of the brain. The brain evolved from the back to the front. The frontal lobes gives us the ability to analyze and reason. The limbic lizard brain, the emotional brain, when it senses danger, it reacts and automatically defaults to the negative. And especially in this busy, bustling world, remember what the definition of stress is, and that is the reaction to a perceived threat. So maybe this was real danger at one time, but a lot of us are perceiving danger where it really isn't, and our body's going through, you know, the stress response because of it. And also, there's a lot of choice now. Now we have lots of choice, and there is a paradox of choice in this nation too. Now we have so many choices that can be stressful. Do you guys ever feel like that? When you go into a big store, or you're you know, I'm packing for like a trip and I'm going through my closet and I'm going, oh, you know. So back when there wasn't so many decisions to make, people were not so stressed out. And actually, the US and another country were asked how many ice cream flavors they wanted, and another country said, like, we just want 5. And of course, the US was like, we want, you know, the Baskin Robbins. But when you go into Baskin Robbins, it's hard to choose a scoop of ice cream. Also, decision fatigue. When we have so much choice, it's hard to make decisions. So, what do? Carol Dweck was really, I love her research about the mindsets. And it's all about mindsets. the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. So people with the growth mindset, and they actually study this in children, giving them puzzles to do, and children that, two groups of kids doing puzzles, one group got really, both groups had a simple puzzle, and they kept getting faster and faster and faster at doing it, and then they said to the kids, who wants a harder puzzle? And they realized the kids with more of the fixed mindset said, no, we want to just keep getting faster with what we have. And kids with more of a growth mindset said, no, we know that we're not going to be as fast, but we know we're going to take a dip, but then we're going to, peak. So again, the growth mindset, failure is an opportunity to grow. I can learn to do anything I want. Challenges help me grow. Versus failure is the limit of my abilities. I'm either good at it or I'm not. Oftentimes I'll say to my mom, Mom, Linda's an amazing dancer. Oh my God, she'll say, oh, she was just born like that. I'm sure she was just born like that. And as we know, people that are really good at things have practiced a really long time, no matter what it is. And I always go over this graph with my clients as well. And I know you can't read it, but I put it up for a reason, because I want you to Google fixed and growth mindset when you get home, and just notice the difference about how challenges, how people with fixed mindset, they avoid challenges. People with a growth mindset embrace challenges, obstacles, effort. I can't even read that. So if I can't read it, criticism and the happiness of others. So keep this in mind, our mindsets. And the good news is we can shift them. So 4 steps to changing your mindset. Learn to hear your fixed mindset. Learn to know that voice when you tell yourself, I can't do that. I'm not good at that. Recognize you have a choice. Talk back to it with more of a growth mindset. And take growth mindset action. Change the dialogue between the fixed and growth mindset. So fix, if you fail, you'll be a failure. You can't do it. I knew I couldn't do it. A growth mindset person says, most successful people have failures along the way. If I don't try, I fail automatically. And our reality, it's all in our heads. So the mind chatter, right? The mind chatter. So internal radio station, your thoughts become the lens for which you see the world. So that mind chatter, recognize that it's almost like a radio station, and you can change the dial. And when I learned this in my positive psychology class, I've repeated this a million times, even when I'm teaching yoga. The brain does not know the difference between what it sees and what it thinks about. So you could be in a relaxing place, you can be on a beach somewhere and in paradise. But if your mind is somewhere else and you're worried or you're stressed, your body is thinking that you're in that stressful, dark place. We create our own reality through the happiness formula. To feel differently, we have to think differently. And if you create your own reality, and your reality is the reality you're experiencing does not serve you, create a new one. So again, it's actions. And this was my passion project when I was taking my positive psychology course, and this is I'm going to give you a little bit more information about what you can do. The ABCs of positive psychology, I realized we were allowed to do whatever we wanted in the course, and I realized maybe because creativity is one of my strengths, that I was learning about all these cool words, and like awe, and like hope, and like flow, and like grit, and like zest. And I decided to create the ABCs of positive psychology, which I recommend to...
I gotta say something.
What?
So I remember when she was... I'm the judgment guy, so I said, we have a task, right? We got to get it done. We need a plan.
What do you mean we? It was me.
Right. So Julie needed to, so I'm giving her advice, right? So then she says, I just need to think about it. I just need to think about it. I just need to think about it. So literally, the iPhone came out, her new iPhone came out, and she says, I'm going to go out and just see what hits me, right? So this is how that started, right? You were just kind of thinking about this idea and you were waiting for it to hit you. Completely opposite of how I kind of would do it. But anyway, that's why she said through my lens, through her photograph lens, and these are her pictures. So one of the things I always say is that use this as an inspiration for you guys to go out into the universe and in your daily life and find your positive psychology, you know.
Or get positively psyched. So I was the first one that used the hashtag positively psyched, which I'm a words person. You know that. And from A to Z, these are words and moments that get me positively psyched. So I still have in my notebook like A, you know, through Z and whatnot. So here we go. And this truly was a flow experience in the making, and I will define what flow is. So if you want to check this out on Instagram, it's called Positively Psyched. And I purposely did this on Instagram so that it would be accessible to the public. And these are all my own photographs that I literally went through my photos. I used my iPhone 6 the entire time, plugging things in with my fingers to create this project. And so here we go. We're just going to go through them. So awe. So A stands for awe. Awe is a distinct and powerful emotion with two defining features: a perceptual vastness in number, size, scope, complexity, and the need to alter assumptions about the world, events, hope, or people, nature, God. So this photo was taken out my bedroom window when I lived on the Hudson River, and I watched the sunrise, and I was just in awe. So when was the last time you have experienced awe? So you can experience awe. Examples of taking the scenic route, going outside, turning your gaze upward, witnessing a phenomenal performance. When was the last time you took the time to experience awe? We're walking around like this on our phones. We're not looking up. We live in the best city in the world. And this could be anything from looking. I was sitting next to a baby on the train, and I looked at the father, and I'm like, I got the best seat on the train. That few moments of looking at this chunky little baby gave me that moment of awe. And then broaden and build. The Twin Towers of Positive Psychology by Barbara Fredrickson. So basically, positive emotions broaden our awareness and build resources. Negative emotions narrow our focus and don't allow us to stop and smell the roses. Think of a day that you're feeling negative. Think of a day where you're in your head and someone could even come to you and say, hey, I want to cheer you up, and you're like, no. Think of another time where you're kind of feeling like you caught the train and you're on a good day and then you're on a roll. We broaden, when we're broadening our horizons, we're building a reservoir of researches. This was taken of the Freedom Tower being built. I was teaching yoga, and I so happened to get the sun hitting the Freedom Tower. So how can you begin to broaden and build your reservoir of positive emotions? Compassion defined as to suffer together, the ability to understand the emotional state of another person. Remember, other people matter. So how can you be more, are you compassionate towards others? Are you actively driven to help? And this picture was taken in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and I don't even think it's still there, because I think I looked for it. So again, compassion. And there's scientific research on all of these in my book. Discernment, the ability to judge well. So sometimes we feel like we're bombarded with the paradox of choice and don't know which direction to take. So, you know, oftentimes what you fear may be your road to peace and joy and happiness. So do you feel confident when discerning what's best for you? When was the last time you made a great decision, and what did that feel like? E, empathy. You know, so I remember in my psychology classes, it was always like empathy. We were always taught about the importance of empathy, the ability to see and feel the world through another person's perspective. So this was the Tiles of America Memorial in the West Village. All the tiles were made by kids right after 9/11, and I think we really felt such empathy. Everybody felt empathy to New York City. So again, how can you become more empathetic towards others? Flow. Flow is a state of intense absorption where you feel like you're one with the music, where that you're bridging that gap between skill and challenge, where you feel like you're in the flow. And ask yourself, when was the last time you felt like you were truly in the zone or one with the music? And this was when I was assisting a public yoga class in Bryant Park. Gratitude. Gratitude is a sense of thankfulness and joy in response to receiving a gift, whether it be tangible or a moment of peaceful bliss evoked by natural beauty. So again, this was a surprise birthday cake brought out to me, and you know, that feeling of gratitude that, you know, that not only did other people matter to me, but this was proof that I mattered to them. So, and also I want to stop about gratitude. If the research has shown that if you write down 3 things you're grateful for for 3 weeks, it will increase your happiness for up to 6 months. So get a piece of paper next to your bed, write down 3 things, how you attributed to that, that good thing, and see if a few months later, if you're feeling better about the world and the world around you, and I guarantee you will. Hope. Hope is the motivating force for change. If you don't have hope, then you're not going to change anything. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tunes without the words and never stops at all. And goals are the anchors of hope. What do you want to accomplish? I just so happened to see this beautiful balloon as I was driving in Southern California with my best friend. Intention is the aim or a purpose. It's what you do, what you plan to do or achieve. You know, a lot of times if you go to yoga, they say plant an intention. This was again in a different class in Bryant Park. Setting an intention to do your best, an action. When was the last time you set an intention for yourself? Joy. Describes happiness as the expression of joy, contentment, or positive well-being combined with the sense of that one's life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. To me, that's going to a concert. This was a Jay-Z and a Coldplay concert at midnight on New Year's Eve, and music's always been my thing, and I was just like, oh God, there's no place I'd rather be. But again, these are through my lens, and I just hope I'm inspiring you to figure out what truly brings you joy. Keystone Habit, I really like this one. This is the Keystone Habit has a domino effect. So yoga is my Keystone Habit because when I do it, I tend to eat better, sleep better. It's my meditation practice. So what's your Keystone Habit? And make sure if you're going to do anything in a day that you're focusing on a Keystone Habit and you have that domino effect. This was taken at a yoga class in Times Square. Oh, luck. So my mom used to say, I'm going to the casino tonight, and I would be like, I hope you win. Oh, I never win. And I would say, good, then you're not going to win. And you know, a lot of people say, like, I'm just not lucky. Do you guys ever hear that? Like, I just don't have good luck. And I was fascinated by the research in lucky people. Lucky people are skilled at creating and noticing chance opportunities. They make lucky decisions by listening to their intuition. They create self-fulfilling prophecy via positive expectations. And they adopt a resilient attitude that transforms bad luck into good. So you're as lucky as you think you are. So again, this says home run and a rainbow right over it at Yankee Stadium. So are you lucky? You know, try to increase your own luck. Mindfulness is learning how to pay attention to what's occurring. It's the union between outer activity and inner experience. This was my first meditation class with resident doctors at Lenox Hill Hospital. And again, the union between outer activity and inner experience. When was the last time you were truly being mindful? So the benefits of mindfulness, as we've gone over in relaxation is medicine, are plentiful. North of neutral, this is a really important thing in positive psychology. So basically, positive psychology, according to the same researcher, Chris Peterson, is just because you're not depressed doesn't mean you're happy. Most people are neutral. Most people are blah. If you say how you're doing, I'm fine. But using the tools of positive psychology, the hope is getting you north of neutral. And this was the Space Shuttle Enterprise that literally flew right over my head when I lived in Jersey City. Are you stuck in neutral? And what would it feel like to be north of neutral? Optimism. Rob already went over the benefits of optimism. People who are optimistic flourish and live longer, period. Optimism is a skill that can be learned. Learned optimism is a term by Martin Seligman, and it's the idea that a talent for joy can be cultivated. We can actively challenge our negative self-talk to become more optimistic. And this was a picture right outside my window, right after a huge rainstorm that I happened to catch a rainbow. So we need the rain for the rainbows. P, positive psychology, coined by Abraham Maslow in 1954. Strives to study not just what's wrong with people's pathology, but what's going right. And we already went over Socrates and Plato and Aristotle believed happiness meant living and doing well, a life filled with value, including frequent positive feelings and emotions. And this was when I was out with my positive psychology tribe. So I thought for the course it was nice to include everyone. Quality connections. Again, It takes two to tango, right? Other people matter. So creating and cultivating quality connections increases our happiness and gives us a feeling of comfort and belonging. So how are your connections with others, and how can you cultivate more quality connections? Resiliency, the ability to spring back into shape, or better yet, to take on a new and improved shape altogether. I love Darwin's quote that says it's not the strongest or most intelligent species that survives, it's the one most adaptable to change. So being resilient. Positive attitude, optimism, and the ability to regulate emotions, to see setbacks as opportunity for helpful reflection. So again, on 9/11, this was taken from from a rooftop on 2012. So would you consider yourself resilient, and how can you increase your resiliency the next time you're challenged? Savoring. To savor is being attentive and appreciative of a particular experience using all your senses. People who are habitually mindful of their current experience are more likely to experience frequent and intense positive emotions, to feel self-sufficient, competent, and to have a positive social relationship. So are we savoring even what we eat? Everything we do, we're rushing, especially as New Yorkers. This was taken on my birthday in Martha's Vineyard, and I was just like, God, this is just, like, it's summertime, it's great, you know, there's so many days we're wishing that we were at the beach. So savor. We're getting there. Transcendence is climbing or going beyond the previous state or form of oneself. Self-transcendence is when a person can focus on something other than himself. So it's going beyond your own limitations, taking a new form. This was just taken in Central Park when I saw somebody doing this amazing bubble thing. So what area of your life can you go beyond and transcend? Understanding. The first step is to give your full attention. This was Rob at one of his cooking classes at the Natural Gourmet Institute. It starts with good listening skills. I love there is no greater distance between two people than misunderstanding. So we're not taking time to really listen to people and to understand where they're coming from, especially with texting. I find there's a lot of obviously we know what happens with that. So the next time a friend's relating information, challenge yourself to understand their thoughts and feelings. Is there a relationship currently suffering from misunderstanding, and what can you do to improve that connection? Vitality is defined as a state of being strong and active with energy. But it also requires us to be well rested, and that's why sleep is medicine as well. So finding balance in the polarities that need each other, like play and rest, eat and digest, sleep and exercise. We feel more vital when we feel connected to nature and others. This was on Shelter Island at the end of the summer. And it's hard not to feel vitality when you're in this setting. But when was the last time you felt vitality? And also challenge yourself, even in the middle of winter, that's when it is more challenging. But again, we can find ways. Willpower requires grit or sustained interest and persistent effort in a passionate pursuit of long-term goals. Our habits are also essential to willpower, and the good news is, remember, habits can change, and making willpower a habit itself is the goal. So what gives you the power of will? You can change any habit now that you know you can, and increase your happiness. So your willpower to pursue your passions and accomplish your goals, visualize your best self, and how you can use willpower to move towards that. X factor. So technically, X factor can mean two things. When I worked in weight loss, I remember learning how if somebody calls physiologic on a day and after they've been maybe overweight or unhealthy for 10 years, most likely they had an X factor. What made them pick up the phone that day? Maybe they saw an unflattering photo, maybe they got some blood